Welcome to today's episode of Overcoming the Fear of Authority. We are going to go on all the fear because it's been coming up in the collective lately. So let's just talk about the fear. So, overcoming the fear of authority. And I think let's just scale it back first. And, I could talk about fear of authority in the sense of the government, but let's not go there right now. Because if we look at what authority even means, right? Or what authority even is in our life. And the fear of authority is like, it could be fear of the police, it could be fear of your parents, it could be fear of your teachers, your, friends, or it's like fearing authority means that you are pedestaling someone or something or a group of things. Fear of authority is like even an experience that you feel has shaped who you are. You're fearing reliving that experience. So you're putting that experience in an authoritarian level, like above you, that controls you, right? So authority is a sense of control. And when we fear authority, we're fearing people, places, or things that have control over us. And I think if we look at the fear when we feel it, because, there's the light side and the dark side of fear. And this is why I'll never say that fear is, well, it's just irrelevant or not real or it's just a low vibe. Like we have to address the fear at the individual level and the fear at the collective level, right? Collective consciousness. Because when you're looking at this fear at the personal level, sometimes it's fear of not being enough, fear of not being worthy, fear of being wrong, fear of being criticized or condemned. It's that people pleasing. And then when you look at fear on the collective level, it's like, again, fear of being wrong, fear of being prosecuted, fear of going to court, going to jail, fear of, fines and debts and penalties. And again, it's this powerlessness that people have, when we are outsourcing that power to an external source. We're outsourcing the power to a parent, to a partner, to a business, to a client, to a, government department or agency, or to the police. And while we have that fear, we're in this sense of fight or flight. Like we've got to defend ourselves, justify, we've got to explain. And this is where, if you look at where this fear is actually coming from, it's not that it doesn't exist, but it's like, what is driving this fear? So as someone who absolutely used to outsource and people please, like if we look back at my upbringing with my family, I had a very toxic family and a upbringing in a very like spider web of control. When I was asleep, because I was an NPC asleep, I couldn't make a decision. I couldn't make a single decision without outsourcing that decision to someone else, getting approval for that decision. And it didn't matter, no matter what I chose in any given moment, it was never the right choice. Because I was outsourcing those decisions to other people's opinions, other people's beliefs, other people's expectations through my own personal growth and ascension journey and overcoming different layers of fear. It's like if you walk the line of safety or people pleasing, or I don't want to upset, I don't want to rock the boat, I'm gonna people please. If I do this, even though I want to do it, this person, that person, this group, or XYZ is gonna happen. And you walk the line of safety, walk this line of mediocrity, or it's not even that, it's like a sense of disconnect or unfulfilled because you've externalized it. Whereas when you learn the truth of who you are and what you believe and what your values are, and there are some things that are just natural to who you are, your personality, your identities, these core values don't change. So, well, they can shift and change and evolve as you evolve, but their core values, like they're who you are. And when you start making decisions from the place of knowing who you are and what you want and what you stand for and what you value in life, we don't care about what other people say or think. And it's like you're not walking that middle line of pleasing half the room or the full room. You've got to be willing to have half the room completely love you and the other half hate you and despise you, because that is just the polarity of life that we're in. You can't please everybody. Someone is always going to have something to say. But are you listening to that? Right? So when we look at the fear of authority in the sense of government systems, there's all sorts of projections out there. There's people that are still asleep in the system, working 9 to 5. You got to pay your taxes. You got to do this. You got to do that, and then we've got people on the total flip side of the coin that is like, I make my money. Who gave the government authority to take half of it? Because let's face it, the amount of taxes we pay is nearly half, if not more. Taxes, fines, penalties, licenses, fees, charges. Like the government overreach has just hit a critical level. People cannot survive. So it's going to take a courageous person to just say no. When you say no to the authority, when you say no to the people you're trying to please, when you say no to mum and dad, when you say no to your family, to your friends, and you say, this is what I believe and this is what I'm going to do, that takes courage. But true love is how you deliver that. Because we don't have to say, no, fuck you, fuck off, and have a fight and create controversy. We can say, that is not my belief. That's okay. If you don't believe me, I still love you anyway. You don't have to. You don't have to believe. You don't have to have the belief in me. But I want to have people around me that believe in me or value the similar things that I value. Because if I'm going to walk the line of courage and do something differently, I don't want naysayers around me. I want people that are supportive. And it's not delusional. It's just, they're different frequencies. We're resonating on different levels, and that's okay too. I can still love you for where you're resonating, but that's just not me. And I think it's the journey that I've experienced over the last 2 years. I've overcome such deep levels of fear that like, it's so easy for me to say, guys, it's not real. It's all fabricated in your own mind. This is more about your mindset and inner belief than it is any process, any legal, any document, right? You've just got to find your power and your belief. What do you believe in? What do you trust? Who do you trust? At the end of the day, the only person you can trust is yourself. Do you trust yourself to make the decisions, to create that new revenue stream, to say no to the people who don't have the belief? Because the collective consciousness, it's just duality. And the darkness or the shadow aspects of that duality aren't there to pull you back. They are there, it's there to catapult you forward. It's like the rubber band effect. The further back you pull into the darkness and overcome that fear, the rubber band will then ricochet forward and catapult you so far forward into levels of courage, levels of power, autonomy, levels of self-worth. But yeah, like to bring it back, like so many people are afraid of consequences. So many people are afraid of consequences. So let's talk about some of the consequences, the collective consciousness fears. What's one of the most common collective fears that we hear today? The most common collective fear that we hear daily is, I'm going to go to jail. I'm going to be taken away from my family. I'm going to end up in jail. I'm then a failure, right? And that's scary. It is really scary because the fear of that is visceral, right? When you receive a letter from the ATO, when you receive a letter from a solicitor, when you receive a letter from your accountant, when you receive any kind of government, when the cops pull you over, people's natural response, fear, shit. It's like ingrained to us. I've done something wrong. That's the first response. So right off the beginning, like we're on the back foot, like, fuck, I've done something wrong. And even the cops, like they pull you over and they go, do you know how fast you were going? Right? They want you to own up to it. And it's like, not that I've never been pulled over by the cops. I've never done a breathalyzer. Funny that. Never. My whole life. I think it's so bizarre that I've never had that experience. So I can't really speak to it. But if it was to happen, I'm speaking with another human. I don't care about their badge. I don't care about, I mean, obviously, what are the cops there for? To serve and protect. That's the oath. It's community service. It's a community service to serve and protect. So if they pull me over, they're there for my protection and for service, right? Pull me over. What's going on? Okay, cool. Like, I'm just going to enter into I'm not on the back foot. I haven't done anything wrong, and I'm not going to defend, convince, submit. I'm just hand over your license and registration. I'm sorry. Has there been a crime? Has a crime been committed? Like, do you know what I mean? It's not about the language or the script. It's about your belief inside and how you approach the conversations. We have people setting up PMAs and going to the bank. They're afraid, right? Because they put the bank on a pedestal, and like the bank is going to say, no, naughty little citizen of Australia, you are doing something wrong. You are not getting a bank account. Is that true though? No, a bank is a business. They're offering a service. They're actually holding money in trust on your behalf. If they choose not to provide that service to you, have you done anything wrong? No. That's okay. We'll go to a different bank. It's heaps, heaps, and heaps of banks popping up. Decentralized finance as well. Right. So, it's like we feel like we have to ask permission. We have to request. We have to, and when I look at all of the public sector and all these public contracts and agreements that we're entering into, it's like people are just entering into them so unknowingly. Like they're defending themselves, they're like buying into all of the controversy and trying to explain and justify and but this and then blah, blah, blah. Like over my time of responding to different government agencies and departments, and what has worked and what has not worked comes back to what I believe. Because if I actually believe what I'm writing on the letter and I'm doing it in a very peaceful, neutral, respectful way, there is no defense. There is no defense. There is no argument. If you are arguing, then you're agreeing to what they're accusing you of. So our natural instinct is just to fight or to argue or to run and hide and throw the letters in the bin. And it's like we have to up level a little bit to overcome this, because if you like keep burying your head in the sand, you're never going to overcome that fear. You're always going to be worried of what the ATO is going to say next. You're always going to be worried of what bill that accountant emails you at bus time. And overcoming that fear isn't learning all of the processes and all the legal structures and getting all the templates. And like most of this journey is your own personal courage and self-belief. Because you can have all the templates and all the resources, all the information and all the technology to enact your status. But if you don't believe it at the core level, deep down underneath, nothing's going to work. This is where, like, I see people, they get like analysis paralysis. And you're looking at the wrong thing here, because I've seen things work in the public sector. I've seen things work in the private sector. I know how public accounting and tax compliance works. I know how the private sector works. uh, both sides of the coin. And I've seen people discharge hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of tax in the public sector without any legal process. And then I've seen people discharge hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of tax in the private sector. There's more than one way to skin a cat. And the truth is, you've just got to learn what it is and learn your role, your function, and the truth of who you really are, and then just communicate from that space. But if you keep fearing all of these government departments and agencies and not entering into constructive conversations, nothing's going to change, right? So when there has been failures, because there has also been failures, and I look at these failures, right? And I don't see it as a failure, right? What I see is people who give up. They give up. They succumb to the fear and they revert back to what they know because that's easier. Because sometimes doing what you don't know the outcome. You're in uncharted territory. You've never behaved like this before. You've never spoke your truth. You've never increased your prices. You've never said no to somebody. You don't know what that feels like. And that's scary. What if they reject me? What if they say I'm wrong? What if I'm going to jail? So you have nothing in your reality to prove you otherwise. So, what is required to step on the other side of this is the courage. But what do you need for that courage? Trust. Trust. Trust is the biggest asset, right? So, if we look at faith and trust in the current economy, right, is what keeps it going. People still believe in the system. They're still entering into these compliance obligations. They're still, and it's the trust and faith that the Australian government will provide for the economy. That's what keeps the cycle going, the game of money. But if we look around, we can see that trust and faith is starting to diminish at a very rapid rate, if you don't mind me saying so myself. Like when I was looking at, media outlets and the ATO posts like 2, 3 years ago, like the general consensus was like in compliance, in agreement. Right? You look at some of these posts now, and it's like 80% people are using their voice. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So you can see at the collective level, the trust and faith is diminishing because the government has not been providing what the community needs. The promises that they've been making, they have not been delivering. Electricity prices have gone up. Where's the savings on our power bills? I know I'm paying more, right? They've mentioned tax cuts, but who even is affected by any tax cuts? All I see is an increase in tax. Tax has doubled in the last 10 years and it's set to increase more. The cost of living and inflation is on the rise. Like, what are these politicians even doing? Right now, I'm not political, but I have got my finger on a bit of the pulse because I look at the economy, right? And if you look at, I did a deep dive into the balance sheet and the profit and loss of the Australian economy, because that's what it is. It's the CRF fund, it's the Commonwealth of Australia. It has financials, it gets audited. And when you look at it, right, there's the asset side and the liability side. What creates the assets? What creates the liabilities? Things that make you go, hmm. But when they're controlling both sides of the balance sheet. Accounting adjustments, complete control. They're controlling inflation, controlling the assets, and then they control the liabilities, right? Guarantees, warranties, and letters of comfort. I read an audit report of that. That's controlling liability side. Controlling the asset side is raising the currency, right? But what is this currency backed by? Liability, debt. If they're controlling both sides of it, it's a game that we keep contributing to. We just keep fueling it. And what I found was what keeps fueling this is trust and faith. Trust and faith. So If we know that they are controlling the asset side and the liability side, they're creating currency and raising debt instruments like you wouldn't believe. How do we move beyond this? And instead of fearing it, we've got to learn it. We got to see it for what it is and learn about, well, how are we contributing to this? Because if we don't trust it anymore, if we don't believe it in anymore, what can we believe in? And it comes back to self and community. When I look around at people in communities, people in business, humanity is still there. People naturally want other people to succeed. When someone is successful, they want others to succeed. If someone does not want other people to succeed, they're not successful. They are in fear, they're in competition, they are in comparison, right? And they have their own things to work through. But genuine, good humans doing amazing things in this world just want to do more, not less. It's like we don't have enough resources to do the things that we want to do. So we just want to create more resources so we can do more things and we can help more people. And I get to see that. So because I get to see all of these good humans, I have so much trust and faith in humanity, in people, good people doing good things. So scaling it back down to the fear, right? Back to the fear and like fear of compliance, fear of government overreach, fear of controversy, fear of lawyers, solicitors, accountants, bankers, like all of these things that contributed to a system that clearly is broken. How do we actually overcome that? Well, it's a process of growing through it. You've got to look at, why are you afraid? Why? Okay, so we're afraid of going to jail. Is it true? Do you know anybody who's gone to jail for not lodging their taxes? And then, there'll be the people that do critical analysis and they will find the evidence. I remember I had a client come to me once with in a lot of fear and she's like, "Oh, this person and then that person and then he went to court and then he ended up doing 18 months and then this other woman," and like she found all of the evidence. Because this is the thing, right? When you believe something to be true, your subconscious mind will find the evidence to prove you right. And I want to challenge that because where's the evidence? And when I see people fail, I don't see it as a failure. I just see it as a unwillingness to step on the other side of that courage and a distrust in themselves. And what took me through it, so I had a spiritual awakening. I had a spiritual experience, right? It was, I guess you call it a godly moment. And it was when I was in the depths of my darkness. And let's just say God spoke to me, whether it was God, source, spirit, whether it was just my heart speaking to me. But there was a part of me that spoke, and it was so loud. And it was like, "Abby, you will never, ever be here ever again. Trust." And I was like, okay. I was so sad and broken, but something inside of me was like, just trust the process. And it's not like a blind trust, because I think if you blindly trust, that's when you can end up in a bit of trouble. But you got to trust the process, trust the journey, trust yourself to make the best possible decisions for you in any given moment. But we also have to trust and believe in something greater. And what got me through it was I truly believe in something greater for all people. I believe that we are at the forefront of changing the very fabric of our economy. And I have full trust in the outcome, whether it's in our lifetime or the next. But there is just something inside of me that believes this is the way. And that's okay if you don't believe that, if you can't find that trust or faith, but that has been my guiding light. That has been like, trust me. Like, if someone says trust me, please don't trust them. You've got to find the trust within yourself, right? So, I want to speak to a specific time where the fear consumed me and how I moved beyond it. Because when we have this fear of authority, it can be all consuming. And if you just like shove it down and don't presence it, it's just going to rear its ugly head at a later date, right? Or it's just going to be like a presence that's always lingering. And I was literally having a conversation with a client about this yesterday, and it's taken a lot for her to step into deeper levels of trust and take some action. And I can totally understand and relate to where she's at because I've been there too. You have to understand, like, as an accountant, I was completely indoctrinated into the system. So it wasn't, just waking up one day and being on the flip side of the coin. There was a process of like really peeling back a lot of layers and a lot of identities attached to the system. My whole career was based off making money off the system and keeping people compliant. So I've been there, and there's like new levels, new devils. So let's talk about like the biggest, right? This is when there's, that I had every government agency and department coming at me. Yeah, I had it all, right? And it's like I faced off with the monster. And that's visceral, right? Because you receive letters and you go into a response. You have anxiety, you have fear. You start worrying, you start thinking about your children, your family, like what if, what if, what if, what if, what if? And is all of this what if conducive to the scenario? Because what you want to do is not act from the fear. Because when we take actions based on that fear, then that's a reaction. And instead of being reactive, we actually want to respond. So if you're in a space of fear, you need to balance yourself. You need to move through the fear. You need to integrate that fear. And through integrating it, you have to find that self belief. What do you believe in? What do you trust in? What faith and trust do you have? Because you ain't going to be able to step into courage without it. So, in these times, right, I met with circumstances that have given rise to fear in my body, and I've had to process it and move through it. And some of the things that I do is like obviously breathing, breath work, amazing, but then asking myself questions and who is answering these questions when I'm asking them? So I create a safe space and I sit and I ponder. First, I allow my mind to go in every different direction it needs to go, right? Because you're in fear, you've got to assess, overanalyze every potential risk, right? Risk assessment is important. Allow yourself to do it, but then stop and then find your faith. What do you believe in? Who do you believe in? And what is your self belief? Because doing something just because someone else did it is only going to get you so far. But doing something because you genuinely believe in the outcome is something else. So when I had this fear response, funnily enough, it wasn't actually because of any government department or agency. There was a series of events, but the worst response I ever experienced actually was when, oh, my ex and I, we were heading to Cirque du Soleil and we're in the Uber and we drove past the AFP. Now, I've never had any experience with police officers, but he just made a passing comment like, "Oh, look, there's the AFP. They're going to get you and lock you away." And like, normally I would just laugh that kind of shit off. But we went to Cirque du Soleil and I could tell that I was different. And then After that, like we stayed in a hotel, we are in the hotel room, and just the things that he was saying to me, like I knew it wasn't him. It was like literally the collective consciousness was speaking its truth. And I went into a huge fear response and I jumped in the shower and I literally for hours was in the shower just like catatonic in fear just because of one stupid little comment. But I had to move through that because in that moment, I feel like I was like processing that collective consciousness because it's so real for people. And it was very real for me in that moment. And where was it coming from? I didn't attach it to the identity of the person that was in the experience with because I knew it wasn't. There was different levels of, support that wasn't there, but that was a different journey in and of itself. But I had to anchor into the things that I did believe in. Because even if no one else believed in me, like what do they say? Innovators are often considered crazy at the beginning because their ideas are crazy and like, oh my God, you can't think that. That is ridiculous. You will never achieve that. No one's ever done anything like that before. You should not do that. That collective consciousness telling you that is trying to keep you safe. But we got to find the safety within ourselves to step outside that comfort zone and be a little courageous. Because if we want a different life for ourselves, if we want a different life for our children, if we want a different life for the economy and business and community and health and wellness and education and food and resources and travel, and then we've got to do things differently. But the fear that you are going to face off with in the process, it takes courage, it takes trust, it takes knowing who you are. Because no process, no legal document or application, or there is no application, there is no submission, there is no Crown doesn't go to court. We don't play the game. We learn the game and then we walk off the court because we ain't contributing to it. This is not what we're here for. So, what are we here for? When you realize that it is no fight, there's no fight. Genuinely, there's no fight. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. You don't have to apply, submit, request. It just is. Your power is there. You were born with it. You just didn't know. And you can, if you find safety in all the knowledge and all the processes and all of this and all of that, cool, find it, but embody it as well. Because knowing all of the things ain't gonna save you when you're facing off with that monster. Knowledge did help, but it was the belief that backed that knowledge. I've seen people in the public sector that don't have any legal knowledge do the same thing because they believe. They believe it to be true. And this is why people who move through sovereignty, there's different journeys. There's people that really struggle with it. And then there's people that's just a breeze. And it was like, done. It's like, oh, babe, you already live your life this way. We're just giving you like paperwork to support that. Continue living your life the way you have and know you're now fully supported. And that is a breeze. I'll tell you, that's so wonderful. It's a breeze. There's other people that so desperately want to be free, so desperately want to be liberated and autonomous, but they still outsource that power to accountants, to solicitors, to the courts, to the governments, to the agencies, to the licenses, you can't do this because they said so. Hmm. I'm not going to say yes and I'm not going to say no. Every situation is different, but it's commercial. Okay. So we're talking about trust and safety. This is where it starts and this is where it ends. It starts with trusting yourself and it ends with trust in the economy because trust in yourself and trust in the economy are two different things. I can trust myself, but I also have trust relationship in commerce. through the birth certificate. There's two forms of trust. So when we say public trust, well, there's a public trustee and guardian. What is trust? Trust relationship. What is the trust entity? And do you trust in that entity, or has trust been broken? These are the questions, right? So when you trust in yourself to understand the different trust relationships, you can conduct yourself so differently in commerce. So if you want to step into more trust and understand the trust relationship and you want to start learning more, this is a safe space for that. I'm not here to tell you what to do or how to do it. I'm here to show you both sides of the coin so you can choose. Choose what you believe in and choose how you want to act and choose what you want to do. There is no right or wrong way. But just know that if you have the faith and self-belief and trust in yourself, I will gladly walk beside you. But if you then replace me as the person of authority to pull you kicking and screaming into a space that you just don't have any trust or belief in, I can't do that. I'll gladly walk beside people and support them. But that courage, I cannot give that to you. You've got to find it within yourself. You've got to make the decisions for yourself. You can't outsource those decisions to me. I'm not here to tell you what to do. But what I can do is share my experience and the experience of many others and show you what's possible, what's on the other side, without the fight, without the controversy, without the requests submitting, the claims, the defenses, the arguing, without comparison or criticism, without justifying yourself. There's something else there. Call me the activator of truth through trust relationship. That's what I'm here for. I'll activate your truth and help you guide your journey. Because at the end of the day, it's yours, not anybody else's.